Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics in this video where we're at the point where the government have already extended Brexit border checks on goods from the EU into Britain. I'd like to take a look at what the prospects are for the government actually keeping its word at the third time of asking. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So at the start of this year, for the first time in decades, we raised trade barriers with our most important import and export market. I say for the first time in decades, that's all I can be sure of. I'm pretty sure it's the first time in history. The level of divergence required checks on goods passing between Britain and the rest of Europe. As a result, checks were set up to make sure that only allowed goods were transported from Britain to the EU, to Northern Ireland, and to the rest of the world. But this is a focus on the EU today. Checks should also have been set up between the EU and Britain. But the government wanted to hide the impact of Brexit for as long as possible. So unlike EU countries, they didn't start preparations until very late in the day. Too late in the day, in fact. So instead of having the facilities and staff in place to be able to carry out those checks, all we got were lorry parks all over the place to store the lorries that couldn't go anywhere. The government announced last year that we would not be applying checks on inbound goods until July 2021. But people in the know doubted that even this would be possible. Progress on hiring the staff needed was slow. Michael Gove was never able to answer MPs when they asked him directly how that was going, and expansion of physical infrastructure was non-existent. Liz Truss, who is the Minister for International Trade, wrote a letter to Michael Gove and the Chancellor Rishi Sunak. She made sure it was leaked so that the public knew that she was concerned about this, for when it blew up in the government's face, basically. In the letter, she wanted to be assured that the checks would only be delayed for 6 months, that they would take place from July this year. Now, why write a letter like that and make sure it's leaked to the public unless you seriously doubted that they would meet their own deadline? In the letter, she made it clear that failure to apply the checks would lead to smuggling, would be challenged in the courts, would cause damage to our reputation abroad. And sure enough, we did not meet that deadline. We should be applying those checks now. We aren't. We don't have the staff, either customs agents or vets. We don't have the infrastructure. The same witless Kent MP that was caught out abusing the England players in private was talking up investment to expand the facilities around Dover. That means the money has only just been allocated. Put another way, the actual work hasn't even begun. The government say they will be applying checks now from January 2022. That would represent a 12-month delay. In theory, starting them in January is better than July. Demand is much lower in January. If you're going to have a new system, apply it when the demand is low. There will be genuine teething problems when it's first set up, and implementing it at a relatively quiet time helps you overcome them without really terrible consequences. But the thing is, who really believes that we're going to be applying them in January when work on the necessary facilities is still behind? Not the Association of Port Health Authorities, it seems. The chair of the organisation, Gary Gould, said that several posts had said that they won't be ready by then. Hardly a surprise if money is still being allocated for the work, and we know the money won't actually be enough. He also said that if one border post isn't ready, then none of them are ready. In other words, if we went ahead with the checks and not all posts are ready, it's going to create problems with trade flow. He also talked about the staffing. He said that they operate on a cost recovery basis, which is quite common for this sort of thing. You do the job, then you bill someone, you get the money for it. But the problem here is that they need to hire and train a lot of staff at once, a huge number. So they need a load of money up front to do this. Mr. Gould said that port authorities still didn't know how the funding for this was going to be managed. Know what that means? It means they haven't actually begun that process of hiring and training in earnest. How could they without the money? I'll link the article with this interview, of course, for you to see for yourself, but it's quite clear that port authorities really don't know what's going on. There are so many fundamental issues that the government haven't been clear on. He also talked about the need to know whether they needed vets in place all the time or not, so that staffing hasn't been organised either. They don't even know if there are enough vets or environmental health practitioners in the country to manage this. He said documentation screening is coming online from this October, for the physical checks of paperwork, but that nobody knows how the system's going to work. Well, we've seen this before, haven't we? Guess what that means? It means that the government either aren't developing the system with the involvement of port authorities, because they're completely in the dark about it, or they haven't begun developing the system at all, which means it's not going to be ready for October. Either way, what it most certainly means is that we won't have an efficient and effective system in place on time. You cannot develop a good system for anything at all, without involving the end user. It's project management chapter 1. The government just keep messing things up here. The head of the port health inspection team at my local ports was also interviewed and had a few interesting things to say about that staffing. First of all, that the government were not putting in place long-term funding commitments. They said that they just couldn't manage on one-off grants or 2-year funding programs. And I think they would be right to be wary of this. This government will absolutely fund something for a short time to avoid the immediate impact of Brexit and all the damaging headlines that would go with it, and then wind the funding down so that they can blame resultant failures on local authorities. And if those local authorities happen to be Labour ones, all to the better. Not that they all are. They said that this port authority, I should say, said that they doubled their workforce already and it would be trebled by October. Now, try and think about places that you've worked or work at now. You get someone new, people show them the ropes. Some are experienced. Some of these new people will be experienced in the industry, but obviously not in your organisation, so you have to show them how things work. Some will not be experienced at all, not in your workplace, not in the industry in general. They're just fresh. But people pitch in, help them out, you all get through it. Getting the odd new colleague now and then, you can manage it like that. Now, when you're told that an organisation is trebling its workforce over a period of months, the new workers outnumber the experienced ones 2 to 1. How do you manage that? So staff aren't all in place yet. Until they are, training can't even begin. Bear that in mind. I don't even know how long it would take realistically to train people in new complex systems. But however long it is, you can't even have day one until you've got the staff in place. Do we even have enough people to train them, is my next question. Do we have anyone to train them at all if the systems that they will have to use are still in development and aren't involving the port authorities right now because they're in the dark over it? How quickly can the physical expansions be built? You need to house these new workers somewhere. It's not enough to be built in time. They need to be built and then set up, and then the staff to become familiar with them. And then I got to thinking, what if it's not ready for this January? At the moment, I'm thinking to myself, how is it going to be ready for this January? It's not, is it? So let's say it's not ready for this January. And I don't mean it misses the deadline by a few weeks. I mean, it's nowhere near ready. Do they then extend it until next July? But July is a bad time to initiate something like this because demand will be high and those teething problems will escalate. You want to implement a new system at a time of low demand. So does that mean that they say it'll be delayed until next January, but they know full well when they get to next January, they'll say, no, it's delayed until the following, next July, get to July following January. So in other words, is it actually going to be delayed until January 2023 in reality? 2 years late. What damage will be done then? What will other countries, like the United States or China, for example, have to say about that? I'm going to try and find some more answers to this because there's an awful lot of questions going unanswered here. But in the meantime, that's what we know so far. There are a lot of things need putting in place. Many are lacking a clear plan to do so, not just not having enough time, but there isn't a clear plan on all the staffing issues. There isn't a clear plan on all the facilities issues. There certainly isn't a clear plan on the funding issues. And it's less than 6 months before it all needs to be working. But those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. If you'd like to support the channel further, please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.